All right, everybody, welcome to another edition of the Sports Inquirer podcast. In this edition, we're going to be talking to a new business owner, Troy Gray, and he will delve more into his business and activities. But before we get started, as always, to follow everything that we do, go to the mothership, thesportsinquirer.net, premier site for news and notes in the world of sports. You can also go to our social media platforms on Twitter/X, Instagram, and Facebook. Just look us up under the Sports Inquirer or my name, Etienne Marcel Pertut. And finally, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to our content on platforms such as YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, and more. And once again, just look us up under the Sports Inquirer or Etienne Marcel Pertut. We really appreciate that. And it's a really good way to keep track of everything that we have going on with subscriptions. And you get constant updates. I do it for the things I like to follow. So do it for yourself as well. Makes it a lot easier. As I mentioned, we're bringing on Troy Gray, founder of TAGTEAMWORKS, a new business endeavor that I think y'all will find very interesting, ties professional business with the world of sports. So we're going to talk to Troy Gray right now and bring him on to our show. Oh. Hey, there he is. All right, all right. Now we have Troy joining us. Thank you for that. So once again, here is Troy Gray, a founder of TAGTEAMWORKS. Troy, thank you for joining us on the show. And we'll start. What was the inspiration for starting this business? And we'll go from there.
Hey, thank you, ATN. I appreciate you having me and just following the Sports Inquirer and everything that you've done thus far has definitely motivated me and really excited to be here. But in terms of, what the vision was, the reason why I built Tag Team Works really kind of came from my playing experience. So I'm a former graduate football player at the University of Central Florida in Orlando, Florida. And once I graduated, obviously there's a lot of goals and aspirations to move into the next level, and typically that's the mindset for a lot of individuals that are student athletes, whether you're coming out of high school or college. Even when you get into semi-professional or professional sports, the day eventually will come, sometimes sooner rather than later. Sometimes it is a little bit later for those where it is that time to take the next step in terms of following um, the business world. And so that's what helped me kind of really build out Tag Team Works. And it's really to help former student athletes transition from sports into the professional world. And so with that, the motivation after I graduated and knew that professional sports really wasn't in the cards for myself, I actually coached college football and high school football, and moved into a profession where I am now, which is staffing, recruiting, and assisting companies with their hiring needs. Through that, I found that a lot of organizations look for a lot of intangibles that former professional student athletes have: leadership, determination, the grind, the grit, and really being disciplined in their day to day activities, especially going from a 5 to 11 p.m. schedule to now, where do you feel that void? And that's what really helped me bridge that gap from graduating to starting your professional career. And that's where the platform is based, really just to help in that transition, whether that's through networking, whether that's through collaboration or finding jobs on our job board, and really putting yourself in front of employers to get your name out there.
Yeah, and how tough is that for athletes when their playing career is over? We hear about that from the professional side. We see the documentary stories about losing millions and everything like that. But it also happens to even their high school careers ending or college career. You as a former Division I athlete, how difficult is that transition, and how have you just use that as a motivation, maybe through yourself personally, or maybe through your former teammates, and seeing their transition into the non-athletic world?
It's difficult. It really is. I mean, typically you're kind of focused on one thing and one thing only while you're playing your sport. You really are trying to master your craft, and it's your only job. I mean, from if you look back to when you were younger and growing up through middle school, high school, and you've devoted a lot of your life to these sports. The day after, you know that it's finally concluded, is a tough moment of realization. It's hey, life is here, but how do you use the skills that you've already gained, about the invaluable skills that you've gained on the field, whether that's falling 7 times, getting up 8. Uh, these are areas where you kind of lace up your, so to say, your bootstraps or your cleats, and you get to work. But how do you get to work? And that's where Tag Teamworks is here to step in by providing a place where you can gain valuable insights, and utilize those skills, sharpen your skills that you've gained on the field or on the court or on the balance beam. And really, what we have is athlete transition resources, whether that's a career explorer or figuring out, hey, I need to sharpen my skills on my typing test. In addition to that, predictive index, how do I build a resume? These are all areas that you can sharpen your skills off the field, and really utilize them when it comes to your next opportunity in the professional world. So it's difficult, it's tough, but it's something that you're used to, being kind of your back against the wall. And when you're in the corner, how do you come out on top? And that's where a lot of the mental aspect comes from. Being a former student athlete or a former professional athlete, you're able to use what you learned in your sports background. So it's a difficult transition, but it's one that I know that a lot of student athletes have already inside of them to make um, themselves move forward.
Yeah, and we'll get to the actual like job placement and also what you sell to employers and to your client base. But that's what I was looking on the website and seeing the introductory video on the website. A lot of it was about development of the athlete or the former athlete themselves. So it's more than just finding a job for them, but it seemed like it was more about developing their own skills, just maybe finding their skills. Elaborate more on that side of things. You touched on it a little bit in your last answer, but more about the athlete and them developing their skills and being more than just finding a job for them.
Yes, sir. So, when you wake up every morning and your day in day out is training. It's focusing on sharpening your skills, really focusing on your craft. In terms of sports, I mean, those are things where you're waking up early in the morning, you're training. So now, how do you fill that void? How do you take the skills that you learned, in the playbook, in film study, and transfer those skills over? And that's where we want to be able to provide as many resources as possible so that you can still feel that you're a part of the team, that you're still in the locker room or the dugout. And those skills that we have on our website, where you can continue to sharpen them, is really a place for our athletes to build their resume, build the intangibles, as I said, that typically employers are looking for. Some of these areas where you can have your job responsibilities on your resume, those things are great. But the areas where you are really ingrained, where it's natural to you, being a leader, having that resiliency, those are areas where we want to make sure that you can highlight. Because if this is your very first job opportunity or you're looking for your first step, how do we get you in the best place possible so that you're well equipped, so that when you do step into either an interview or your first day on the job, that you're feeling confident, that you're feeling as if you're stepping back into the arena or back onto the field. So that's where the website has an area for former student athletes to really develop those skills.
Yeah, and for personal experience, I'm sure anyone listening or watching this, the saying of "it's not what you know, but who you know," and finding work is very important. Elaborate on that as well. I see there is networking opportunities for the athletes. And you mentioned that also on the board. What about that aspect of finding employment or developing the career? How have you worked with your organization Tag Team Works with the networking aspect of finding employment?
Course. So, I mean, we're used to stepping on the field, being in front of an arena of hundreds, sometimes thousands of people. And as much as your name may be on the back of your jersey, once you step off the field, sometimes those things erase. You don't typically walk around with the shirt on that has your jersey number or your name on the back. And so, how do you continue to build a network outside of the network that you've already established on the field or with your team? And that's where Tag Team Works comes in, and we're able to have a network. Sometimes you've seen LinkedIn or you've worked through Instagram, or there's a lot of different sites that you can go to that you can put your resume out there. But putting your resume out there is always great. That's how can get some visibility. But even more than that, how do you have someone speak on your behalf when you're not in the room? And that's where we're trying to develop is a network and a community and really a team of like-minded individuals who have the same background as yourself, where you can network with them, talk to them about maybe some jobs that you're interested in. If you're looking for a mentor, this is an area where you can connect with other athletes that are either well established in their careers or maybe walking the same path that you are. So through having this network where you can direct message other individuals, where you can put your resume out there for employers to identify, and really just an area to collaborate. That's what Tag Team Works is able to provide, so that you can build out your network, not only here locally in your community, but reach that beyond your city, your state, and even out across the country. So that's where our network is able to step in and help these athletes.
Right. And transitioning to the employers themselves, how has that dynamic been for you? Because I'm sure there are a pool of athletes that you can work with, but what about finding the employers and making that connection?
Yes, so we got a lot of connections in the phase right now of reaching out to employers, whether that's through social media, whether that's through LinkedIn, or just myself reaching out to my personal contacts, guys that I've played ball with, or ladies who have played sports at UCF or are part of the NCAA in other areas. That's how we're developing relationships with employers so that when they are able to come to the website, they're able to look for the ideal candidates. Now they can either, depending on the level of service, there are three tiers, whether it's a starter, pro, or Hall of Fame for the employers. That gives you either limited access or full access to not only the website, but the type of candidates and former athletes that are in our network. So from there, the athletes build out their portfolio, their profile, and employers are able to do a search. If I want to find a former Division 1 football player, if I want to find a former Division 2 basketball player, I can go and filter that specifically. Another area that I didn't highlight is sometimes this is your first job for former student athletes. So how do you have someone speak on your behalf? You have your coaches. You've worked with them day in and day out. They're essentially your supervisors or your managers. So have them advocate and talk on your behalf, because again, you want more people that can speak on your behalf outside of the room that you're in. And similar to dropping a pebble in the water, you got that ripple effect. That ripple can reach the masses versus just having one person that you're talking to. You can have a lot more, and that's where employers are able to come and be that ripple effect of companies that are looking for these skills.
Yeah, and thank you once again, Troy, for joining us on this edition of the Sports Inquirer podcast. If you were talking to a current student athlete that's in the midst of their career in their sport, and I'm sure they're so focused on their athletic endeavors and academics and otherwise. What would you tell them to? What would be some steps that they can take while they're an athlete to prepare for the future, whether that's physical, mental. We've talked on networking, while you're in school, but maybe what are some things that they can do while they're currently a student athlete so that they can prepare themselves for when their collegiate career concludes?
Network, network, network. While you are in the prime of your sport right now, I would start to build those connections. There's a lot of individuals that I started to build connections with at school that I still currently have relationships with now, and it's not just for a mentorship or a mentee, but I go to them for guidance. I go to them for insight. They also have their networks that they're a part of, whether that's locally or nationally. And so that's how you can continue to bridge that gap. But what I would say, start off with is proactively just go ahead and have start building out your resume. And some of those things, when it comes to building out your resume, you may not have the jobs or the internships while you're working because you are fully invested in your sport right now. But I would say start looking at potential classes or courses that you can take. Project management is very big right now, and a lot of organizations are looking for people who have their PMP certifications. Is that something that the school is able to help you out with? Typically, those are like 12-week courses. So while you are working and focusing on your sport, you can start to build up your resume through other areas. So I'd say definitely start with creating your resume. I'd look at typing tests and different predictive indexes, and maybe even a career explorer where you can look at what the next step or um, the ideal job that you would want to have. Start building out what the long term plan is now, because once the cleats are hung up and the jersey is in the closet, you don't want to be behind the eight ball of trying to say, okay, how do I get to my ideal dream career if sports aren't the way? And you can still find areas where you can work within sports. Um, but what are those places that you would like to go? So I'd say just first and foremost, start building out your resume. Two, start looking at potential internships or areas where you can get courses that would align with the future endeavors that you have. And then lastly, I'd say, hey, join TAGTEAMWORKS. Start creating your network now where you build out your your profile, and start making those connections, because you never know. I mean, you may run across somebody who has their own company and they're looking for individuals as soon as they graduate to step into either an internship or a contracted position where you can figure out what that job may be for you. So those are a handful of things that I'd say just to start with while you're in school, so that once you get your degree and you hang it on your wall, that you're already ready and prepared for your next endeavor. So that's where I would say those are the areas to start with.
Yeah, and two more things. First of all, once again, we have Troy Gray or founder of Tag Teamworks, joining us here on the latest edition of the Sports Inquirer podcast. Before we get to concluding about how athletes and employers can work towards you or towards your business, what about NIL? And we need to do a full episode separate on NIL because it's very different from when you were playing. I don't want to age you, but pre NIL era of playing in collegiate athletics. Not necessarily what impact that's had on the sport, but do you find like athletes are maybe more aware of their worth and finances a little bit more now than when you were playing collegiately?
Of course. I mean, I think it's great. I think NIL is really good, especially for athletes who are in the prime of their sport, being able to receive income. Not only are you working towards your degree. I mean, that's prevalent. That's first and foremost. That's why you're a student athlete. Um, while you're working towards your degree, but also to be able to receive some income. Sometimes there are athletes that come from backgrounds that they may not be able to have the income that they're able to receive through NIL, which is amazing. Now, How you go about utilizing those funds, that's an area where I know here in the state of Florida, for high school students, that's a requirement to have that financial literacy course before you actually graduate. So there is that component of it, because once you see dollar signs, the next thing you see is, okay, where do I spend this money? But if you're able to have a plan, where it's not just immediate, but there's a long term plan behind it, that can open up a lot more doors for you in the long run. So even though in my day where I played collegiate football, and there were no NILs, or the transfer portal wasn't as what it is today, there still is a lot of upside to having these NIL deals with companies, with organizations. It opens the doors not only for these athletes, but for the organizations to bring in, even kind of like a feeder program. You've worked with them in college. Let's go ahead and bring them on as permanent employees in the near future, because we know what their worth is. So from the self-worth standpoint, yes, athletes are able to see where they are, and compare to other athletes from a NIL standpoint. But at the end of the day, that money will come. That money should be utilized towards things that you want to have in the future, and not just the immediate where I want it today. So that's big. NIL I think is amazing. There's some areas where, realistically, I think having some regulations on where the money should be divided up and how it should be utilized, because you typically have players that will stay in one place, and maybe if the dollar sign was a little bit bigger somewhere else, that may open up the doors for another opportunity. But I think it's amazing for athletes to have that opportunity with NIL.
Yeah, and once again, Troy, thank you for joining us. If people want to learn more about Tag Team Works, where can they learn more about it and get information about the business?
Yes, sir. So www.tagteamworks.com. That's the website, the platform. Once you get there, there's a place where you can either log in the top right, or you can click join the team in the header. Fill out all the information for the registration page, whether you're an athlete or if you're an employer looking to join the website. You scroll down to the bottom. It's completely free for all of our athletes. I want to make sure that they have all the resources possible in front of them. And then for the employers, there is a page where it has our memberships, whether it is starter, pro, or Hall of Fame. Outside of www.tagteamworks.com, you can also follow us on our social media pages: Instagram at Tag Teamworks, same with Twitter and X, Tag Teamworks. We also have a Facebook page. And in addition to that, we're working on some future initiatives around the junior program, Tag Team Works Junior, for anyone who's under the age of 18, looking for mentors or looking for study guides, help groups, or something in your local network or local community for events. So keep an eye out for that in 2026. But those, all of our social media pages are at the bottom of our website, as well as on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Blue Sky. Everything is there for you. All Tag Team Works.
All right, once again, Troy Gray, thank you for joining us, founder of Tag Team Works, and a very good conversation. And hope we have you again for another podcast in the future.
Thank you, ATN. I appreciate your time. Love what the Sports Inquirer is doing, continuing to build out the network, having everybody come and get the latest news and latest updates, not only in the state of Georgia, but across the country. So I appreciate everything that you've done. I definitely would love to be back. Any topics or insight that I can continue to provide for those student athletes currently, or if they're already in their established careers, would love to reach out to you. Reach out to me, Troy, at tagteamworks.com. www.tagteamworks.com is where you can find us. I look forward to meeting you and everybody here in the near future. And ATN, thank you again for allowing me here on the show.
All right, thank you.